Welcome back to the Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy daily start to Slice Monday morning. It's a new week and actually some new things to be speaking about kind of on the higher term timeframes, of which I wanted to follow up on yesterday's higher term timeframe analysis, then thread that into the lower term timeframes so we can get a more well-rounded picture, at least hopefully speaking, as this week does seem to be the week that we're probably going to be seeing resolution on the current range, meaning that Bitcoin very likely to either see, probably past 30 or back down to maybe 25. So we'll be going over the major pivots for that and what to kind of expect and where the probabilities do remain. And I suspect without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So starting off right over here, I wanted to start off with something that we spoke about yesterday, which is the weekly time frame, of which there was a major moving average cross that we have not seen since basically February of 2022, where Bitcoin essentially began the major massive bull trap and headed down to the current the current lows for this cycle. In this case, what I'm referring to is the 9 cyan exponential moving average right here and the green 55, as you can see right here. They have officially crossed as with yesterday night's closure, so that is now confirmed. And just going throughout the history of Bitcoin, the full history that is, every time that we have seen that cross, it has produced, an immediate, I wouldn't say, sorry, not an immediate, but a general upside movement. However, there is a bit of a nuance to this. While it does typically present, an overall upside movement over the course of time, and generally an initial jolt, as you kind of see right here as well, there typically is a retest onto the 9 exponential before lifting upwards and onwards, in many cases for, many months, in one case, even years. But of course, there are traps along this as well. You can see on this one right here, while it was a pretty decent move, about a 25% move, ultimately that one did fail. It was obviously Rona times, but same thing over here, busts on through, comes back down, retest, and then upwards and onwards, kind of setting in that base. Anyways, as of right now, the 9 is currently a little bit above $26,000. So it obviously depends upon when Bitcoin would retest this, but the longer that Bitcoin again goes sideways here, the more and more that this will be naturally pulled up. And probably by next week, you're going to see it come in around, low $27,000. So that's going to start to set in a bit of a base for the current structure that Bitcoin has been kind of operating within for the last three, working on week number 4 here. Anyways, moving on from there, I did want to once again redress that would be pretty much in alignment with the weekly mean band for the Gaussian channel, which Bitcoin got its first closure above about 2 weeks ago now. That was on the 27th of March. And as you can see, retested it last week just about perfectly. And so far, so good. And as long as Bitcoin remains above this mean band, I do remain overall biased to the upside, with that as essentially an invalidation, meaning that if Bitcoin closes below the mean band, which is currently basically around where the 9 exponential is, but just below $27,000, then at that point, it's really time to consider that we might be seeing like a major trap, and very likely Bitcoin sees back down to 25, maybe a little bit below 25, and then I want to reassess things after that for potentially a major trap. But until that happens, upside still more likely. Upside somewhere around the top side of the Gaussian channel here would be the most relevant, just historically speaking. Anytime that we have seen the weekly close again above that mean band, it's gotten a free ride to the top side on both the weekly and the 5-day. And in this case, is this time going to be different? Maybe. I mean, there's really not been too many other prior times, so not going off of too much right there, but it's the best that we can do with the data that we do have. And, for all the prior iterations, that has been true. So far, so good. Anyways, moving on to the next thing, which I think is probably the most important portion of this analysis for the more higher term timeframe minded people with begetting probabilities and whatnot. We can once again check on the volatility versus stochastic momentum setup over here, which is getting extremely mature now. As we can see, that volatility represented by this indicator, the BBWP indicator, is like literally at below 1 percentile numbers right here. So comparable to what we saw in the consolidation phases in December, basically was the last time we saw it get this low. And yes, the lower that it does get, the more and more that it does imply that the the natural expansion phase will be greater. So the longer that it spends time within here, the more and more likely the next move is going to be, maybe not necessarily a 20% move, but probably more around like a 25 to 30% move. So of course, this can stay down here for, quite some time, as you saw over here. But ultimately, it is really now time to be paying attention to this, because when it does happen, it very likely happens very fucking fast, similar to what you saw before as well. Anyways, I need to actually explain the setup. So once we do see volatility getting, crushed down here, it is then time to be looking for expansion. Expansion is defined, or at least I define it as back above that 10 percentile number right here, the critical level. And then also with the BBWP and the moving average having positive slopes, that would be full on confirmation. At that point, we can go and reference the direction of the stochastic oscillator, as that has a high correlation to the direction of the volatility expansion, depending upon which side you go to. In the upside, it's about 86%. To the downside, it's about 70%, as we'll go over in a bit. But as of right now, the current daily stochastic momentum pivot, it actually went up from yesterday to today, and it is now at 28,400. Typically speaking, when it does go up and price is already below it, that is actually usually a sign that it's going to continue down, or at least pressure still remains to the downside, which I suspect that it does. But ultimately, until we get volatility expansion, the direction of the stochastic oscillator is irrelevant. And naturally, the more that Bitcoin goes sideways here without breaking down, especially below 27,000 bucks, the more and more that this will just have a natural reset, and flipping around to the upside will be very, very simple. So in that case, whenever we have had upside setups over the past 5 years, it's been 14. 12 out of the 14 went in the direction of the stochastic oscillator. So that would mean that if the stochastic oscillator is pointed to the upside, very high probability of an upside movement. Not a certainty, but a high probability of, an average movement of about 20% with a standard deviation of 5 over the course of about 10 days from expansion. So again, probably happens pretty damn fast once it gets going, and taken from the current base, that would put Bitcoin somewhere around low 30s, like 33,000 bucks, I would say, give or take a bit from that number. Until then, however, as long as Bitcoin is living below this pivot, downside actually a little more likely. As you can see, out of the past 5 years, there's been 20 prior iterations with that particular setup. 14 out of 20 worked out with downside pressure or downside movements, giving it about a 70% strike rate. And the average return was very similar to the long side at about 20%, but in this case to the downside with a standard deviation a little bit greater as well, 8%. So very likely looking at least back down to 25 if that happens, maybe even lower than that if it really does end up being a massive trap. But I do think that 25 or a little bit below 25,000 would be a pretty damn good area to have at least a sizable bounce and probably reversal if it does come to that to begin with. Anyways, so now that we've gotten through all of that, I wanted to go through the ranges as defined by the HPDR indicator, the old herpaderp over here. 12-hour time frame continues to just get it, in my opinion, like pretty much perfectly right here. We can see that the median coming in right around about 28.6 or so, still going to be essentially the top side of this current range versus the bottom side at about 27,000 bucks, meaning that any sort of closures in between these levels is irrelevant. But the first major initial warning flags that Bitcoin is going to be moving with, intense speed, probably, would be a 12-hour closure above the median, which again is about 28,600. At that point, probably, the top side of the 50% range here is about 30,000 bucks. So that'd probably be the next area of interest. To the downside below 27, that would be, in my opinion, probably good enough to really be looking for like the next major move down to about 25 or so. 25, give or take a few bucks from that number. But ultimately, it's the same range that we've been looking at for the past couple weeks now. I know that's boring as fuck, but that's typically when important things do happen. And fair enough. I think that's a good place to maybe leaving off on this particular video. I do want to once again give notice to the Jewel Light that you can get for free for the first 30 days if you follow the directions in the link in the description below. It also gets you 0% on maker fees for derivative contracts for 30 days as well. But I should also let you know that for the Jewel Light service, currently it's integrated with Premium, and we're actually going to be disintegrating Premium. We're going to be offering the current features on the app for enhanced data and whatnot for free for everyone. And then for the current Premium users, you will remain with the Jewel Light or access to the Jewel Light and everything else that you do have at the current price point. So that will not change for you. However, what will change on the 15th is that the jewel light will be separated and the price will actually go up about $10. So just want to make sure that everyone has full advance notice of that. And again, if you already are in premium, nothing will change for you as far as that goes. But if you do not have premium, then once the 15th happens, and that will be the new price, and that's just that is what it is. Anyways, I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this video yet again. Yeah, I think that we still probably have another few days of waiting, honestly, but likely resolution on this week, maybe around like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday area. Until then, it's time to be ever watchful. And with that said, I'd like to wish you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.